All right. So I'm Ben Bingham with Three Sisters Sustainable Management, and we're here to just discuss a very fine point. This time we wanted to discuss what's the advantage of being a global all-cap portfolio if you're going to be in the environmental, social, and governance space. Can you talk about, Dan, what flexibility that gives you and how that works for us, and what you're doing in relation to that, and how you've been managing it in the last year or so? I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I think that one of the keys of any investment portfolio is diversity. And the more different places you can move in order to gain return, the more flexibility you have and the more opportunity you have to do well. The global aspects are really interesting because the first 2 years we were working on this, the European markets were doing quite well and we were pretty well balanced. We had probably 35% of the portfolio in international stocks. We did that because the returns were good, and we also did it because mainly the European companies scored much higher in terms of social responsibility. So we could have a portfolio that was a stronger social responsibility portfolio by having an overweight in those markets. Then at early last year, it became a real liability. The U.S. market began to take off, and the European markets began to really struggle. They began to have negative interest rates and began to have very slow growth rates. So we had to quickly shift ourselves over to being predominantly in US-based stocks in order to continue to find the right return. I think the interesting thing about this year is that a lot of the overseas markets have been held down for a year or more and are probably going to be great investments. But that will be once the U.S. market seems to have topped out. And then we will probably begin to have the flexibility to move back into having some exposure overseas.
What about the size of the companies? Talk about small cap, mid cap, and large cap.
Well, really the maximum large cap companies like Apple and Amazon, we really don't invest in. We think there are some questions about their how they treat their people mainly, but a few other objections as well. And we tend to focus more on mid cap and large cap. We like the small cap markets, but in the last year and a half or so, they've been underperforming quite a bit, so we haven't really found as many opportunities to be in small cap as we'd like. And so we tend to focus on probably the upper end of mid cap and the lower end of large cap for most of our investments. And also we tend to have a lot of technology in our portfolio now because that's what's working. And so the technology stocks tend to fit into that realm where they're sort of large mid cap to small large cap.
Thank you. Well, I wanted our investors and prospective investors just to know that that's one of the ways that we are protecting your portfolios by being flexible and going where the values are. Thank you very much.